There was a time when the world burned with purpose, when every mountain glowed with fire, and every god believed the light would never fade. But now, the flame trembles. It whispers instead of roars. Its light flickers like breath at the end of life. The golden city of Aner Londo stands still, its halls empty, its marble cold beneath the dying sun. The gods are gone, their songs forgotten, their thrones abandoned to dust. Only one remains, a king crowned not in gold, but in ash. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, the one who once brought order to chaos, the one who cast down the dragons and lit the first age of fire. Now he walks alone among the cinders of his glory. His armor dim, his hands cracked by the same flame he once commanded. He remembers when fire first touched the world, when warmth met cold, and life rose trembling from the dark. He remembers the thunder, the clash of gods and stone, the blinding birth of light. But memory is a cruel mercy. For the same fire that once gave him meaning now begins to die. The air grows thin, the sky grays, the silence spreads like frost. And in that silence, the Lord of Sunlight feels the weight of all he built, crumbling beneath his own hands. He looks into the fire, and for the first time, it does not look back. Before the silence, there was a song, a hymn of thunder and flame, sung by gods who believe themselves eternal. When the first fire rose from the gray, for souls emerged from its light, each one radiant, each one burdened. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, Nido, the first of the dead, Izalith, Mother of Flame, and the furtive pygmy, bearer of the dark soul. Together they struck against the everlasting dragons, their spears of lightning tearing scale from bone, their fire turning the sky to ash. And when the last roar faded into wind, the age of stone was gone. Gwyn built his city of light upon the ruins of that silence. He called it Aner Londo, a heaven suspended between sun and cloud. There the gods danced beneath golden halls, their laughter ringing like bells through the air. To men below, they were more than divine. They were the promise that light could never die. But every flame carries its end within it. The brighter it burns, the deeper the shadow it casts. Izalith's chaos began to twist. Nido's grave deepened into sleep. Seth, jealous and pale, betrayed his kin and claimed forbidden knowledge. And Gwyn, who once feared nothing, began to fear the dark. He saw the fire flicker. He heard the quiet in its breath. And though he ruled a kingdom of light, his heart began to tremble like a candle before wind. The age of fire had been born in victory, but it would end in fear. Before he was a god, Gwyn was a believer. He believed that light was mercy, that warmth could drive away despair. And in those early days, his heart was still kind. He gave his strength to others. He built cities of gold, fed the fire with his own soul, and shared its radiance with all who followed him. To his children, he gave fragments of his light, so they too could carry a piece of the sun. But gods are not immune to longing. As the centuries passed, Gwyn began to feel the silence creeping beneath the songs of his kingdom. He saw the sky dim. He felt the warmth fade from the marble halls of Aner Londo. And deep within that fading glow, he sensed something else, a flicker of new fire, not born from the gods, but from the hearts of men. It frightened him, for in that small, fragile spark, he saw the shadow of the dark soul. He could not understand how something so frail could carry eternity within it. He called it a curse. He told himself that humanity was meant to serve the flame, not to inherit it. And yet, he pitied them. He pitied their fragility, their endless hunger for warmth. He saw in them the same fire that once burned within his own chest. But pity is the first step toward fear. And fear was the first crack in the god of sunlight. Even surrounded by light, Gwyn began to walk in shadow. He no longer looked to the heavens. He watched the horizon, where the first signs of dusk began to gather. The fire, once endless, began to wane. Its light no longer reached the edges of the world. Its warmth faltered against the cold breath of time. And in the gathering twilight, Gwyn saw something that the other gods refused to see, the rise of mankind. They were small, fragile things, their souls dim yet stubborn. They built their fires from scraps of his light, and within those faint embers, he saw something unfamiliar, a flame that did not fade. At first, he called it beautiful. Then he called it dangerous. For their flame was not of the gods, but of the dark soul, and where there is dark, there is the abyss. He remembered Owalasile. He remembered what the dark could do when men touched it. And the memory of Manas's grief echoed like thunder in his mind. So Gwyn raised his armies once more. He waged war not upon dragons, but upon his own creations. He burned their kingdoms. He chained their souls. He scattered their embers to the wind. The god of light feared the dark more than death itself. He could not bear to see the fire die, nor to let another flame take its place. The other gods withdrew into silence. His children turned their faces from him. And the people he once protected now whispered his name like a curse. Still he stood before the fading fire, hands trembling, eyes hollow. He could not accept the truth that the end was not failure but rest. For to let the fire fade was to admit that his age was over. And gods do not know how to die. So Gwyn began to prepare the unthinkable, a sacrifice so great that even the sun would weep. When the end finally came, Gwyn did not weep. He stood before the kiln of the first flame, his crown heavy with ash, his armor gray and hollow. The chamber was vast and silent, a place where even the light dared not move. The flame before him was small now, a dying heartbeat at the center of the world. He watched it struggle to live. Each flicker was a memory, each spark a whisper of what once was. He saw his children in its glow, Guinevere's laughter, Gwendolyn's faith, the endless radiance of his lost age. And then, he saw the darkness waiting beyond it. Not a void, but a horizon vast, quiet, patient. He knew the fire could not last, but he could not bear to see it die alone. So he removed his crown, laid down his sword, and stepped into the flame. The fire screamed. It roared like the birth of the world. And in that blinding agony, the god of sunlight became Cinder. His flesh cracked, his soul divided, his body burned until it was nothing but memory. But the world shone again for a while. The cities glowed once more. The people praised his name. They called it salvation. Yet what he had truly done was not salvation, but defiance. For every fire kindled from his ashes would one day fade again. Every age of light would die the same death. His sacrifice did not stop the dark. It bound the world to it. The Lord of Sunlight became the prisoner of his own mercy. And the flame he gave his life to save became the cage in which all souls would burn forever. The fire lived on, but it was no longer pure. It burned with the ashes of gods and the sorrow of men. The world began to turn upon itself, an endless circle of birth and ruin, light and shadow. Each age promised renewal, but every spark carried the echo of the same flame. Ages passed, kings rose and fell, heroes took up the crown of cinders, each one believing his fire would be the last. They walked the same path, to the same kiln, with the same resolve in their hollowed hearts. And always, at the end of their road, they found him. Gwyn, still burning, still kneeling before the fire he had birthed, his soul long dissolved into its glow. He no longer spoke. He no longer knew his name. He was only motion, the endless swing of a sword, the rhythm of regret made flesh. Those who faced him felt not wrath, but sorrow. The sorrow of a god who never learned how to rest. And when each hero's fire began to fade, they too would kneel where he once knelt, offering their body, their will, their very soul to the dying light. And the world would turn again. Ages of fire, ages of dark, each one built upon the bones of the last. Some prayed to end the cycle, others sought to preserve it. But none could escape the will of the flame, the lingering command of the god who could not let go. For even in ash, Gwyn's soul still whispered, "Let it burn." And so it did. At last, when even the echoes grew faint, and the world had forgotten the sound of its own name, the flame still lingered. A pale light, trembling against eternity. For this was the truth of fire it was never meant to save. It was meant to burn, to illuminate for a moment, and then to fade with grace. But Gwyn could not let it die. He mistook warmth for purpose, and light for life. And so, the god of sunlight became the first shadow of his own creation. The flame was mercy once, then it became prison. Each new bearer who rekindled it believed they were saving the world, but all they saved was the memory of suffering. For every age of fire must feed upon another, and every new dawn must be bought with ash. Perhaps one day someone will see what Gwyn could not. That the end of light is not the end of all things. That darkness, too, can hold peace, quiet, formless, infinite. When the final fire fades and the kiln grows cold, there will be no gods, no thrones, no sun. Only stillness, only rest. And in that silence, perhaps Gwyn will finally sleep. For even cinders, in time, turn to dust. And from dust, new souls will rise, bearing the same question he could never answer. Why must the fire burn at all? The flame flickers, the ashes sigh, and once more, the fire dims into memory. And so the fire dimmed once more,